We'll kill all of those fuckers, every last one of them. They're monsters, they deserve to die. Jack threw the rest of the group an uneasy glance. We came out here because someone called the beach house. They said a group of Iskari were heading this way. We were going to scout around to make sure you guys were safe, but then we heard the shot. I wonder why they didn't shoot me too. Fuck if I know, probably because you're still working for Charisse. Or maybe you were next, but they ditched after fucking up with Randall. Valkii. When a husky voice called my name, I turned to see Randall walking towards me, a little unsteady on his feet. I'll see you, Valkii. After a small glance at me, Jack left my side, hurrying over to the others. The hole in Randall's throat was already mostly healed, the blood on his throat wiped away. But he still looked shaken up, his body drained of energy. I had one of my guys call you a cab. You should get out of here before something else happens. You're sure you'll be okay? Yeah, I'll be fine. Just no yodeling for the rest of the night, maybe. Exhaling a heavy breath, Randall ran a hand through his hair, his nails still caked with blood. The others, they told me about that call to the beach house. Someone said the Iskari were going to attack us or something. The caller didn't give their name, just hung up real quick. Guess everyone figured it was a friend. But something makes me wonder if that caller wasn't working with the assassin. He paused, his somber, uncertain voice fading to a faint whisper. If they weren't trying to make an audience. You're right, the timing is too suspicious. Yeah, it is. Fuck, I'm probably just being a paranoid piece of shit. Coincidences happen. But once, Randall seemed like he didn't know what to say, like he didn't know what he was feeling either. Listen, we'll hang out again soon. I'll make it up to you somehow. But I should get back to the house. Nothing ruins a guy's night like getting shot, let me tell you. Ooh, will he let me hug him? Interesting. Hug him. I curled my arms around Randall with a tight squeeze. After a moment, his hands gently patted my back, a more light and hesitant touch than I was used to. The front of his dark shirt was still soaked with blood, burning my senses when I pressed my head against his chest. After we said our uneasy goodbyes, I watched Randall leave with his group, the Mavar protectively clustering around him as they walked off. But before I took a cab back to the hotel, I had to stop at a gas station to wash off my face. Randall's dried blood felt like it was eating into my skin. Ooh, that's not nice. The next evening, I'd still gotten no word of a new mission. After waiting around for a little while, hunger stirred in my stomach, so I decided to drink from Alusha. Why not? I dialed Alusha's number, and to my surprise, she didn't pick up. All I got was her answering machine, which meant she probably wasn't around. Maybe I'd be better off finding a human for the night. Valkii, excuse me, a moment of your time, please. Just as I was about to leave the hotel, Charisse's agent called out behind me. The evening had been uneventful so far, so I figured I was in the clear, but apparently not. Miss Locke would like to speak with you. Alright, where is she? Please head over to the meeting room, she's waiting for you there. Offering me a slightly urgent, uneasy nod, he turned to hurry off somewhere. I could only imagine what had come up this time, but my instincts told me it wasn't going to be good. Ah, Valkii, you're a welcome change from what I've been dealing with recently. When I entered the meeting room, Charisse rose from her seat, approaching me with slow, deliberate strides. The troubled look in her eyes instantly confirmed my suspicions. Well, I won't mince words. As you might have already guessed, I am in need of your services. Last night there was another murder. Charisse paused for a long few moments, briefly biting her lip. The body was mutilated, his ears and eyes cut out, wires stuffed into the sockets. This makes the third victim of this hidden killer, and only the third victim whose body we found. There may very well be others who have yet to be uncovered. We can't afford to ignore the situation. I agree, they may take me or you next. You're very much correct. It is a great hazard to all of us and needs to be dealt with swiftly. She shook her head intently, letting out a strained sigh. We believe the killer regularly returns to the sewers where the previous bodies have been found, because the stench makes even distinct scents very difficult to track. However, right before I asked you here, I received word that my agent lost contact with her partner by the Sunset Strip. She tracked his scent to the sewers, but called for help rather than risk entering by herself. Smart idea, she must have learned from the horror cliches. Indeed, as cold as it sounds, charging unprepared after a murderer to rescue someone is a recipe for death. Now, if we were to send a large group, I have no doubt that our killer would easily realize they have been discovered. This person must be extraordinarily sensitive to the presence of others, as they've somehow avoided detection so far. Therefore, I intend to send only 2 agents. Kedrick, one of my more combat-skilled assistants, and you. I'm going to find them, Charisse. This ends tonight. I have every faith in you, Valkii. That is why I'm assigning you this task. Her brow furrowed into a deep, unhappy line. There are weapons I've left for you at the front desk, just in case they're necessary. Good luck, Valkii. Make sure you return intact. I'll be back with the killer, or what's left of them. I don't know what to do about the upcoming scenario now that I'm a Mavar. When I returned to the lobby's desk, the clerk discreetly handed me a black box. It held an expensive-looking combat knife and a Glock handgun, complete with a small amount of ammunition. I tucked the weapons into my jacket, wondering if I'd end up needing them. Outside, Charisse's car was waiting for me. I climbed into the back seat where my partner was already slouched inside. Okay, I don't know why Charisse sent you, and honestly I don't really care. Kedrick, a short, tanned man with a hooked nose and beady eyes, gave me a disparaging look. All I need to know is this: what's your combat experience like? Not much, but I can handle the gun. Alright, just stay on alert and tell me the second you see anyone down in the sewers. And that was the extent of our conversation during the car ride. I'm gonna move in my seat again. The perpetually silent driver took us straight to the Sunset Strip, or more accurately, a few blocks down where the missing agent had disappeared. My senses were already prickling on high alert as I stepped out of the car. Motioning me to follow, Kedrick carefully stalked down the nearest alley, one hand tucked into his jacket. Sure enough, a manhole cover on the ground was slightly cracked open, marked by the lingering presence of a vampire. Little rat. We crawled down the ladder, dropping into the rat-infested depths. The sewer's potent smell instantly clouded my head, and Kedrick wrinkled his nose in disgust. Ugh, why'd it have to be the sewer? Well, real estate is pretty expensive these days. Cute, where'd you hear that one, Seinfeld? Snorting with contempt, Kedrick pulled out his own gun and started to creep forward. Watch the back, stay close to me. He gestured for me to turn sideways, following him with my back to the wall. In our cautious formation, we started to slowly move along the sewer path. The acidic smell of vampire blood rose over the stench, taking us deeper into the tunnels. I could tell Kedrick felt just as anxious as I did, maybe more so. His eyes darted around constantly, lips pulled back to show his gritted teeth. As we rounded the next corner, something caught my eye behind us. I instinctively jumped back, squinting to try and make it out. But it was only a rat hopping out of the water. Neither of these matter. I turned around, hurrying to catch up with Kedrick, but he was gone. I could still detect his presence, but it was quickly getting distant. How had he vanished so suddenly? There was only one choice. I had to follow him. If I tried to leave now, the killer could probably grab me before I escaped, and Kedrick might still be alive. Focusing on his scent, I hurried after them, trying to keep my footsteps silent. At first, it seemed like they were moving incredibly fast, getting further and further away. But soon, I realized I was getting closer. They must have stopped moving. A few steps further, and I heard a strange, wet sound echoing down the tunnel. Until just around the next corner, I spotted them. A thin, androgynous figure crouched before a limp body. I couldn't tell what they were doing, but I saw their hand repeatedly moving up to their face, then back to the corpse. Their other hand worked in a sawing motion, as the awful smell of vampire blood filled the air, I realized they were cutting off Kedrick's flesh. Quietly approached, why not? Trying to move as soundlessly as possible, I started to approach the figure. It seemed like they didn't notice my presence until... He abruptly rose to his feet, jerking towards me. The dim sewer lights flickered over corpse-like skin, a painfully thin body, and a belt of glittering tools. I stared at him, struck speechless, not just by his face, but by the hatred I could smell on him, strong enough to make my hair stand on end. I'm gonna cough. Sorry, I didn't manage to mute in time there. Oh, hello. The man finally offered a casual greeting, slipping his still dripping scalpel into his belt. Then he lifted a bone-thin arm to wipe off his blood-stained lips, which peeled back to reveal yellowed teeth. Human teeth, not fangs. I was wondering when you'd finally show up, but you just had to bring along a friend, didn't you? His voice didn't match his appearance one bit. a smooth, pleasant baritone rising and falling, almost playfully. Well, that's all right. I don't think he'll be eavesdropping on us anytime soon. What the hell are you talking about? You just murdered someone. When I shouted at him accusingly, the man flinched, his hands shooting up to hold his head. Could you lower your voice? My ears. I don't like it when people scream. It brings back a lot of unpleasant memories. A horrified look gradually wormed over his face, contorting it more and more, until finally it snapped back to a flat, piercing stare. Right, you don't know who I am, do you? No, of course you wouldn't. You can call me Lazarus, but you might know me as the one who was supposed to get bitten. You mean at the abattoir? What happened? Don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. I want to clear something up, though. I'm not a murderer. I'm a vampire hunter, which makes me the hero here, not the villain. You know, like soldiers, policemen, the guy who flips the electric chair switch. Why do you hunt vampires, then? Lapsing into silence, he gave me a smile that lasted several seconds, growing more unsettling by the moment. I don't know if you've already realized this, but the true power of a vampire doesn't lie in their blood. Blood's only part of it. The true power's in their flesh. So that's how you've grown so powerful. It sounds disgusting, doesn't it? You can say it. I won't be offended. Nobody likes a cannibal, but blood drinking. That counts as sexy. It's a shameless stat and Hannibal didn't switch places. He murmured distractedly for a moment, rolling his eyes in obvious scorn. But yes, that's part of the reason why I hunt vampires. The more vampires I kill and eat, the stronger I get. In fact, I've already got more power than a lot of your kind. I guess you could call it a vicious cycle. Why are you so intent on getting power? See, I don't have any big plans, not anymore. I don't want to take over the world or even Los Angeles. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. He nonchalantly gestured to Kedrick's ripped open corpse, bony shoulders lifting in a shrug. Everybody needs an outlet. Killing is just how I self-medicate, like difficult hands-on therapy. But I'm a very difficult hands-on person. As if to illustrate his point, Lazarus brushed a palm across his corseted waist. The truth is, I've been hunting vampires for some time now. Used to hunt a lot less often, without all the showmanship. I was afraid I'd get caught and killed, most hunters are. Until one day, Charisse took notice of my efforts and contacted me. His voice abruptly grew strained. He kept smiling at me, but the look seemed frozen on his face, like someone had a gun against the back of his head. She and we made a deal. I'd get turned and serve her, and she'd take care of me. It sounded so nice. Lazarus took a long, deep breath, his emaciated chest rising and falling. So there I was, waiting inside the club, ready to graciously accept my promotion. It never came, though. My apology afterwards didn't come either. See, at first, I thought it might have been God playing one of his bad jokes. When he's not letting kids get raped or giving people cancer, he really likes to torture me. But no, it wasn't God. It was just a guy named Andre. And you know him, don't you? Yes, and he's just another egomaniac. I'm glad we can agree on that. Maybe you do have some taste. He didn't try to hide the obvious mockery in his voice. You see, I captured a Golgotha who told me what happened that night. Andre ordered him to capture the Ascari who was supposed to turn me. He decided to ruin the one thing in life I was looking forward to. And you know what? I don't even care about getting turned anymore. I just want him dead. By the time he trailed off to that last word, Lazarus seemed to be talking to himself more than me. For a short while, he stared past me, his cold eyes vivisecting something unseen. But soon, his focus snapped back to my face. Alright, I'm done monologuing, even though all that self-pity feels so nice. I don't have anyone to talk to down here, the vampires never listen to me. I guess this is when you try and kill me or capture me, right? Go ahead. Unless you want to make a deal, that is. Okay, I'm gonna give it a pause to see what happens with my Mavar blood. If anything happens, I'll let you know. If it doesn't, I'm gonna do what I always do. Okay, something different is happening this time. When I chose to not... when I chose to fight him instead of take his deal, I actually managed to do something. I managed to hit him, I managed to slice him, but I don't know how this is gonna go still, so we'll see. The next moment our blades crashed into each other again, filling the tunnel with metallic shrieks. It could... Oh, okay. Soon I managed to carve into his sides again, cutting wherever I could. But his own knives kept cutting me too. For every strike I managed to hit, Lazarus landed too. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this up. I could feel my strength slowly crumbling. But soon Lazarus jumped back from me, putting some distance between us. It was obviously in worse shape, but his wounds didn't seem to be healing as fast as mine. Yet somehow he didn't show the slightest hint of pain. All the bloodlust he'd given off just seconds ago had abruptly vanished. Instead, his posture looked almost limp, like all the life and energy had drained from his body. So she found someone to serve the same purpose I could have. The knife slipped from his fingers, sinking into the shallow water. You'd think I would have learned by now. Same purpose? What? Without another word to me, Lazarus turned away. The next moment he took off down the tunnel, his legs carrying him with unnatural speed. Even if I chased him, there was probably no way I'd ever catch up, even though my injuries were gradually sealing over. The rush from fighting dissolved in my stomach, leaving an empty feeling behind. There was no reason left for me to be here. Okay, I'm not going to take his deal this time. If I need to, I will, but I probably won't. Retracing my steps, I returned to the sewer entrance I'd arrived from with Kedrick, although this time I was alone. But now the tunnels felt strangely empty, even lonely. Maybe it was because I knew the lurking presence nearby wasn't out to kill me, so that the threat that I'd sensed in the air had all but vanished. Sharice's car was still where Kedrick and I had left it, with the driver silently sitting inside. When I climbed in alone, he didn't say anything about my missing companion, and he didn't wait before taking off into the streets either. The air freshener-scented lobby welcomed me back, almost shocking my senses. The dried blood from my injuries must have given off a strong smell because all the Ascari waiting around gave me long stares. And at this rate, we'll... As soon as I stepped inside the meeting room, Sharice abruptly cut off her words to the agent. They both stared at me for a few moments, obviously trying to figure out what had happened. Valkii. What happened? I could see Sharice's eyes grimly flicking over my blood-stained clothes, her nose wrinkling at the smell. Long story short, I ended up using those weapons you gave me. Sharice went silent for a short time, her eyes much more troubled and grave than usual. Then she glanced at the agent beside her, gesturing towards the door. If you'd allow us a moment, please. Of course. After a short nod, the man turned on his heel, swiftly making an exit. The killer, I presume you found them then? When we were by ourselves, she addressed me with a low, worried murmur. He said his name was Lazarus. I had considered the possibility, but I believed he was no longer a threat to us. Her face slowly darkened, expression flickering between disgust and worry. There is only one way for a vampire to increase their physical power, through the consumption of another vampire's flesh. However, just as our blood is poisonous to each other, the flesh is too, with some incredibly rare exceptions. Only a few vampires have the immunity to stomach either. But for humans, consuming our bodies gives them incredible, though only temporary powers. That is how Lazarus grew so powerful. He had promised to change his ways after he became an agent. That was before you entered the scenario, however, and he disappeared. He's dangerous, Sharice. I think he's going to keep hunting us. It's difficult to say for certain. For a moment her voice sounded a little uneven, even shaky, but when she spoke again it had returned to a more cool, collected tone. Now that he's delivered his message, I don't know whether he'll keep killing. However, I will have my agents remain on high alert now that we know what we're facing. You've done admirable work nonetheless. I won't forget your bravery and tenacity in escaping his clutches. From the brisk way she cleared her throat, it was obvious that she didn't want to discuss Lazarus any further. That is all. Please, leave me. Okay, bye. After I left the meeting room, I headed upstairs to clean myself off, slipping on a temporary change of clothes to look less like a murderer. The hotel staff offered to mend and wash my jacket. It certainly needed it, considering the long gashes Lazarus's knives had left. Despite the length of my sewer adventure, the sun hadn't begun to rise yet. I had enough time to visit somewhere, or else I could stay at the hotel. What day is this? Is this really only night 3? There's no way. There's no way. Oh no, okay, yeah, no, it's night 4, it's night 4. Okay, so night 4, beach house for Mavar rep, which is kind of pointless. I don't need the Mavar rep, I might not go. But I need the Golgotha rep for sure, so Saturnalia. I made my way to Saturnalia, where the glamour of downtown LA served as a stark contrast to my earlier sewer crawl. It seemed like a quiet night, although a few people lined the booths. And were mingling in the corners. When I glanced past a group of Golgotha by the bar, I noticed Heath standing off to one side, smoking a cigarette. A moment later, our eyes met and he gave me a gentle smile. Oh, Heath. It seemed to be mostly Golgotha in the bar tonight, isolated vampires brooding to themselves or small groups chatting about things I couldn't understand. They watched me closely, but nobody seemed particularly interested in striking up a conversation. Just as I was about to give up and head somewhere else, I noticed a few vampires off in a darker, more secluded area of the bar, murmuring as they passed something around. But when I drew closer, pulled by my curiosity, I realized they were filling up syringes, needles gleaming with deep red liquid. Bet you think we're pretty fucked up, one of them, a man who looked like he'd been turned in his late 40s, gave me a hoarse chuckle as I stepped closer. His eyes were dark and sunken like two burnt-out light bulbs on a sallow, gaunt face. A bunch of vampire junkies, not very sexy, is it? Wait, what do I have to do? Be sympathetic. I've learned that being a vampire is more depressing than sexy. Yeah, not much worse than being human, though, he thou, another dry laugh, though his eyes never held a trace of humour. We don't do it for fun, if that's what you think. Just do it to stop the visions, otherwise they're always going, piling up. He pulled the burnt-out cigarette from between his lips, using it to motion towards the needles. See those syringes? Got some morphine, Xanax, some antipsychotics to keep it all down. And some hard stuff we probably shouldn't be giving to the humans we drain. Gotta take it almost all the time, every day. That's awful, I'm sorry. You get used to it. Wake up, shoot up, get hungry, shoot up. Before you go out, shoot up. When you get back, shoot up. Before the sun rises, shoot up. A lot of them, ones with the really bad visions, they almost go into a frenzy when they come off the high. Have to get that needle in them as soon as they can before the visions come back. The man flicked his cigarette onto the floor where it joined the scattered dirt, blood droplets and ash. For us, you either go crazy or you go crazy trying to act like you're normal. Just the way it's always been. After a long pause, he turned his lifeless stare over to my face, watching me numbly. Well, I'm gonna head into the back. You take care. Rubbing a hand along his forehead, the man turned to follow the other Golgotha into the side hallway. The sound of their dragging heels followed them out of sight, until finally that disappeared too. I'm not gonna talk to Heath. I'm sorry, I can't. I don't feel like that did anything for my reputation with the Golgotha. In fact, I feel like it may have put it down. Which is not a good thing, even though it says, be sympathetic. I thought I was being sympathetic. And like, that's really bad, because that's my last chance to get the Golgotha reputation. What do I have to do? Yeah, I have to get the leader. Oh, I have to do Randall. I have to side with Charisse? Okay, anyway, we're just gonna have to hope for the best, honestly. Sorry, Heath. Wait, okay, where does it want me to go now? Night 4. I left the bar's quiet ambience, returning to the street. Let's go to the abattoir. Honestly, I'm gonna skip through this. Go talk with the Ascari because it's really boring. You just dance with them and leave. Okay. Go spend time at the hotel. Let me have a look what that did for my stats, actually. God, the Golgotha. I really hope that Morgan's thing gives me a big boost here. Like, I really do. Because this is not good. I feel like my reputation went down. I don't know why. I didn't do anything. Unlike usual, the lobby was fairly empty, though not... Again, this is again boring. I'm very sorry. I mean, it's not boring. She's gorgeous. Chin Ying, I think her name is. But she's just talking about how her paramour is always like reincarnated and she hasn't been able to convince her to become a vampire yet in any of her reincarnations. Alright, Iskari rep. Approach the woman being polite and encouraging. I'm just going to use everything I used before. Okay, there we go. Stats. See, that's big. I feel like this is enough of Iskari, but I need this. It's so hard. When I glanced at the clock, I realized sunrise wasn't far off, so I decided to head upstairs to my room. If you're really interested in what just happened, I do it in Marcus's playthrough. So find it, I guess. There's so much that I'm just repeating. Okay. Right, flipping off the lights, I gazed out the window into a sparkling panorama. It was so strange to think that if I hadn't been turned, this room would belong to Lazarus. Where would I have been right now? Still in Hollywood chasing my dreams? Or if Hollywood rejected me, would I have ended up somewhere very different instead? With my cold cheek pressed to the pillow, I left another night of unsettling thoughts for the comforting arms of sleep. After my encounter with Lazarus, Charisse gave me the next night off. I slept in a little bit, but no one called or visited me, so I decided to prowl the city by myself. In the short while I'd been in Hollywood as a human, I had found an unusual spot that quickly captured my interest. It was only open late at night due to its unique nature, so now was the perfect time to visit. That place happened to be a... What? A miniature bat cave with live bats. In a city with so many rich and crazy people, it wasn't a surprise that someone made their own bat haven. A quiet multi-millionaire had renovated the basement of his mansion into a simulated cave, took great pains to replicate the temperature and flora, then filled it with bats. His reasoning? He really liked bats. It was a pleasant night, so I decided to stroll there instead of taking a taxi, but as I stood at the crosswalk, I noticed someone familiar hurrying towards me. That man from the abattoir, Nick. Hey, Valkii. He slowed to a halt in front of me, his eyes darting around briefly. I didn't think I'd have to see you again so soon, but here we are. Let me guess, some kind of bad news, right? No, not unless seeing Randall counts as bad news. He smirked for a moment, rolling his shoulders. You should head to the beach. Randall's out by the shore, or was when I left him anyway. He would have called you, but Charisse has got to have your phone tapped, and after the other night, we shouldn't risk the Iskari tracking us down. Alright, I'll head over there now. Sounds good. Maybe I'll catch you there later. Yeah, sure, dude. With that, Nick threw me a casual wave and strode off, leaving me to catch a taxi. Guess I didn't get to go see my bats. During the ride to Santa Monica, I reflected on the last time I'd seen Randall. He'd looked badly shaken up, but all of his followers were eager to protect him, clustering around their hero. I knew Randall was tough, probably tough enough that he'd already recovered from the assassination attempt. Still, when I'd left his side, there was a chill in his eyes that I had never seen before. After the car dropped me by the pier, I strolled along the beach towards Randall's house. It felt calm and peaceful, at least until I was in earshot of the Mavar partying outside. Tonight they seemed to be gathered in full force, filling the house and scattered around on the sand, drinking and laughing. What? Some of them seemed to notice me, but they quickly looked away instead of offering any greeting. Why? I thought we were friends. As I crossed the sand in front of the house, I spotted two starkly different figures next to each other. And then, when he came back furious the next day, do you know what Marcus told him? He said, why, Prolapse builds character, no refunds. Ha ha ha, that was fucking customer service. Alicia and Jack were happily chattering away, holding drinks. They seemed too absorbed in their conversation for me to interrupt, so I kept walking past them. There was no sign of Randall among the Mavar, but it sounded like people were still talking about him. Oh, and I was telling Randall about some of my ideas earlier. Once Charisse is gone, think of all the great things we can do with LA. Yeah, but first we gotta lay down some rules so we don't get tyrants rising up again. Make sure nobody's better than anybody else. A few Mavar sitting on the sand fired comments back and forth, nodding at each other's words. Oh yeah, of course, I bet Randall's gonna get everyone on the same page real quick. But what should we do with the Iskarian goals? There's no way they... The crashing waves drowned out the rest of their dialogue. I was about to head inside to look for Randall, but when I finally emerged from the group, I spotted a lone figure walking along the shore, gazing into the ocean. Even though he looked the same as always, the tall, broad body with a steady stride, something about him seemed strangely vulnerable. As I wandered up to his side, Randall turned to glance over at me, his face blank. The next moment, he put on a small, welcoming smile, beckoning me to walk beside him. Hey, Valkii. Nice night out, better now that you're here. I was worried about you. Worried about me? Why, is my majestic aura not turned up to 11 or something? He chuckled, a hollow sound not like his deep, bellowing laughs. Here's the depressing music again. Oh no. I'm glad you got my message. As we walked along the shore, Randall's gaze slowly drifted past me, watching the laughing group in the distance. I wanted to go find you myself, but after I got shot, the others don't want me to go anywhere alone. They're real fired up now, even more than before. Took everything I had to keep him from launching an unplanned attack. Would have been a mass suicide. His last words came in a disbelieving scoff, a little more coarse than I was used to hearing. Slowing to a halt, Randall turned to face me. You know, Valkii. He murmured my name quietly, his voice barely audible over the waves. Things won't be like this for much longer. I know, I'm dreading whatever will happen. Yeah, so am I. Randall ran one hand through his long shaggy hair, exhaling a heavy sigh that sounded like it was being crushed out of him. The sticking point is, Charisse doesn't want to get her claws out of LA. Andre too, he wants power over the city even more than she does. His voice took on a hint of a snarl, but the moment of anger seemed to pass as quickly as it came, and his clenched fingers relaxed against his sides. Listen, after the other night, I couldn't stop thinking about this, so I'm gonna come right out and say it. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or next week or next month, but this war's gonna have a shit show finale. You'll have to pick a side, and if we're not on the same team... He trailed off, letting the silence finish his sentence. I want to know what he says if I say a certain something. I'm not going back there, so I can do that. You'd fight against me. With a slow, uncertain shake of his head, Randall rubbed at his eyes. You know, if I'm going to be honest, from what I've heard and seen, it sounds like you're more in Charisse's camp than anyone else's. It's hard for me to believe you're okay with her lording over all of us. His slow, disappointed... okay, I'm gonna... It was this one, right? But I'm on your side, Randall. You sure about that? With a slow, uncertain shake of his head, Randall rubbed at his eyes. Okay, she's saying the same thing. It's hard for me to be okay with her lording over us. His slow, disappointed words came out in the cadence of a funeral march. I'm going to betray her, I'm just waiting for the right moment. I want to have faith in you, Valkii, honestly I do. A sad smile weakly pulled at his lips for a moment before it faded away. When I was a kid, and even as a grown guy, I dealt with some fucked up things, you know, like most people do. I'm not going to whine and bitch about it to you, or go on TV, or go on a TV talk show or whatever, but I'll say that most of these things happened because I was too weak to stand up for myself. His eyes drifted down to his open palm, where I noticed his bandage was covered with dark sketches. The figures he'd drawn looked even more deformed and abstract than normal. I went through so much fucking abuse from people who had power over me until one day I decided I wouldn't take it anymore. So please try and see where I'm coming from, that it's a real fucking hard for me to accept someone pushing me down again when I thought I'd finally gotten free. That was a dark place for me and I don't want to go back. He stared at me for several wordless moments, his eyes darkened by a severity that I wasn't used to seeing. But... you know, the whole reason I brought this up was... can these bitches stop interrupting him at the most pivotal moments? Hey, Randall. When a voice called out to us, Randall froze. We both glanced back to see Nick waving at us from nearby, off towards the group. Randall, Marla and Joe were asking if you could show them. Tell them to fuck off. Randall snapped back, his voice suddenly sharp and cold. Can't I talk to Valkii for 1 fucking minute? 1 fucking minute without some kind of shit happening. Randall's hissed words trailed off. As the moment faded into silence, all 3 of us seemed equally caught off guard. Oh, fuck, I didn't mean to. Sorry, Nick. Don't worry about it. We know you're stressed. Nick shook his head, flashing Randall a smile. Then his gaze briefly flickered over to me, showing a brief hint of annoyance. Oh, sorry. I'll go help them. Say that you're busy with Valkii. You got to take care of yourself. We need you, you know. With a short wave, Nick turned to stroll back to the house. It didn't seem like Randall's outburst had affected him at all. We do always get interrupted, don't we? Right? Jesus. Everything from people barging in to me getting shot. Can't the guy just have a conversation? A heaved sigh, a warmth slowly returning to his eyes. Shit, what was I saying? I need a goddamn secretary to follow me with a scratch pad. Ah yeah, the reason why I care so much about what happens to you. He fell silent again, this time to hesitantly scratch at his beard, mulling over something in his head. Let's clear something up, Valkii. Something I should have asked you a long time ago. The atmosphere between us suddenly shifted a little. The way you feel about me. How do you feel about me? Oh no. I mean, I think about you a lot. Think about me like the way you think about a friend. Or something different. I don't know what to say here. It's very... I don't know. As something more. That's all I needed to hear. His gaze flickered between my eyes and lips, lingering on both in a longing way. Despite the desire in his eyes, it felt like Randall was hesitant, even anxious, like someone about to touch a delicate work of glass. Oh. But soon, his arms coiled around me, caging me in a protective embrace. Before I knew it, his lips were inches from mine. Lean in. I pressed forward a little, helping to close the small space between us. Our lips brushed against each other, lightly at first, uncertain. Then a longer touch, a kiss that felt much warmer than our cool bodies. I tasted hints of iron and alcohol, the sweetness of blood still lingering on his mouth. He growled softly against my lips, his tongue beginning to slowly press forward. He seems to like... I mean, this is fine. Like, he doesn't seem to have an issue with doing this. I don't know. I parted my lips to let Randall's tongue tease inside my mouth, sliding with my own. Our fangs gently clicked together, and that metallic flavor tingled my senses, the taste of his last drink making my hunger stir. I could feel one of his hands stroking my back, the other softly squeezing my waist. This is just like the moon and shit. Just like, you know, a pack of wild wolves kind of vibe I still get. Even though his arms could have easily crushed me tighter against his chest, it seemed like Randall was holding back, almost as if he were afraid to break me. Maybe it was because we were in public, or because he was afraid of scaring me off. But his passions felt restrained, blocked behind something. At last, Randall broke the kiss to pull me into a tight, enveloping hug. We stayed like that for some time, our arms coiled around each other. He kept my head pressed against his chest, though there wasn't a heartbeat or the gentle rhythm of breathing for me to hear. Only the soft crash of endless waves on the sand. I hope you know what you're doing, Valkii. I wouldn't trust most people to handle me like this. I'm pretty fucked up. But you're different. His words came in a coarse whisper beside my ear, uncertain and hopeful at the same time. Man, I have to get his special ending. I have to side with Charisse. That's fucked up. You've got this I don't know how else to say it. This will, like you're strong enough to grab your own destiny and shape it. When I first saw you in that garage, I thought to myself, this girl's not just a cute face, she's going places. Randall's words were filled with an unusual determination, almost like he was talking to himself as much as me. I look at you, Valkii, and I honestly think you could do anything. And this world, it needs more people like you. It's been hard, but I don't plan on giving up. I don't plan on letting you give up either. Makes us a team, right? He warmly nestled his head against mine, squeezing me for a few short moments. Finally releasing me from the embrace, Randall pulled away slightly, gazing intently at my face. The gentle waves slid up to touch the edges of our boots, before slowly falling back into the ocean. Ah fuck, sorry if I'm acting funny, Valkii. All this stress just gets to me sometimes. Almost having your head blown off doesn't make a guy feel any more relaxed either. He rubbed a hand along his forehead, finally letting out a weak laugh. I got to take responsibility not just for my own actions, but for the actions of everyone in the clan, in my group. I can't wait until all the war shit is over and I won't be stuck in this fucking role anymore, but until then. I need a sharp girl like you to keep me sane, you know? A hopeful light flickered back into his eyes. And I'll be here for you whenever you need me, Randall. I've got a feeling I'll be needing you a lot. Somebody's got to take these assassination bullets for me after all. One of Randall's deep, earth-shaking laughs rumbled in his chest, just a little more hollow than it used to be. Well, Valkii, now that I've talked your goddamn ears off, there's a little while left until the sun comes up, and you never finished that story you were telling me back in Saturnalia. I didn't forget, you know. I still can't believe the fucking sea turtles were doing that. And the priest, how did he explain those bruises to the church later, huh? With Randall's arm curled around my waist, we slowly walked along the shore, falling into an easy conversation, like the ones we used to have. It felt so peaceful compared to our last meetings, almost unnervingly relaxed. Even though we weren't that far from Hollywood, it could have been light years away from us, along with all the cares and worries of conflict. By the time I finally left the beach, Randall seemed much happier than when I'd arrived, like my presence alone had calmed him down. He was reluctant to let me go, but finally agreed only after I promised to hang out with him again soon. As I made my way towards the pier, I heard the sound of Randall's clanmates rushing out towards him, surrounding him like an adoring flock. And when I glanced over my shoulder, I could no longer make out his shape among them. Oof. Oof. Oof, the symbolism. I will see you in the next one. Boy.